Guys, I'm Miss Caitlin and I am the Community Engagement Coordinator at the Park Forest Public Library. Thank you for coming to Virtual Painting with a Twist. If you received your kits from the library already, they include a canvas board, a sample of the painting we're making, a stencil of a cat, and a bag that has all your paint and brushes in it, like so. You should have black paint, orange paint, yellow paint, white paint, and purple paint. In the sample that you guys have in your bag, we didn't use purple, but that's just an additional color in case you guys want to do something of your own, okay? All right, guys, so we're gonna start with our blank canvas and we are going to begin with our orange paint. So we're going to paint a black cat in front of a big full moon. And we're gonna start by painting an orange circle in the middle of our canvas. Now it does not have to be perfect. We just wanna make sure we have this circular shape in the middle of our canvas. All right. Now, once you get that orange filled in, go ahead and go around it and kind of blend out that color. All that excess paint, you're gonna wanna blend out too. And it's okay if it kind of looks faded and not really there, because we are gonna end up blending that in to our yellow to give you a fuller moon and make it look like it's bright and shining. I'm not gonna dip my brush in the water. I'm gonna leave the orange paint in there because I kind of want it to still blend. And then I'm gonna go in with that yellow on the edge, like so. And I think you guys can see, hopefully in the video, that it's starting to blend with that yellow color. You only need a little bit. A little bit of paint will go a long way. Just gonna keep going in with that yellow. Get that blended in. If you get hairs in your painting, it's okay. You can kind of paint them out like I just did. But keep blending until you have like a lighter orange on the outside and some of that yellow's peeking through. Now at this point, you can clean off your brush a little bit. Put in some water. All right, and we're gonna go back in with that yellow and bring that around. Now, this layer of yellow we can blend into this orange. However, when you're painting this yellow, you want to cover the outside of it in black. That's gonna give you your moon shape and then your night sky. All right, so now you want to make this layer of yellow as close to a perfect circle as you can. Again, it does not matter if you can't. It's no big deal. But we want to make this look like our moon. So we want it to be nice and round and big in the sky. Again, if you see some orange in there and you want to blend it more into that yellow, that is totally fine. That's what I'm going to do. Get that yellow in there. And then I think you guys can tell, but you're starting to get your moon shape fully. I'm gonna throw a little bit more yellow, round it out in this right corner. Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and work some of that yellow into the middle here to kind of lighten it up just a little. And then I'm using circular brush strokes because I like how that looks in the painting, but you don't have to do that. If you don't like how that looks, you can do cleaner, smoother strokes, however you want. Okay. I'm gonna go in one more time with some more yellow. Kind of smooth that out. Now, once we get this yellow in, we're gonna go ahead and go in with some black paint around the moon. Now, I would recommend letting this dry a little bit before you go ahead with that black paint. It's because we don't want the black and the yellow to muddy up and mix together and look crazy, okay? All right, so before we go back in and start that black paint, I am gonna go back in with the yellow actually. We want it to look like this moon is glowing in the sky. So we're gonna go do a little more yellow, bring it a little wider. So if you're doing this in the same scale as I am, your moon should be almost off the page when you put this next coat of yellow on, okay? And we want this pretty much exclusively yellow right now, so try not to blend too much orange into this outer edge if you can avoid it. If you can't, it's really not a big deal. So we're gonna go in and put that yellow in. And yeah, if you can see from here that I'm almost off the page with the color. That is okay. We want it to be big. It's a full moon, so it should be nice and big. Nice and big and round. All right, guys, so once you have that yellow in, go ahead and kind of buff that out. Kind of like you did the first time, where it looks kind of faint, but you want to kind of push that excess paint into the outside a little bit. And then you are going to go ahead and clean your brush because we are about to go in with white paint. Okay. We're going to go back in with the white paint and just bring that around a little bit. And it's going to mix a little bit with the yellow, which is okay because we want it to look kind of like it's glowing, got like a glow past the moon, if you will. And then we can put the black on the outside of that white. And there'll be a nice contrast, you know. So go ahead and bring that white around the whole outside. If you put too much white on, like I just did, you can go ahead and wipe off your brush a little bit and then carefully go back in. Again, if you get those pesky brush hairs, that's okay. You can kind of just go in with your brush and kind of try and get them out like that. Or you can be brave and use your hand, but it may smudge the paint a little bit. Just be wary. All right, so once this is in, you are gonna go ahead and let that dry, okay? And then once that dries, we can go in with the black paint. Okay guys, so our yellow paint should be dry by now, so we can go ahead and go in with the black paint for our background. So there's two things that we're gonna be painting black today. It's our background of the moon and then our black cat. So if you remember, we put that little tiny kind of buffing layer of white around the moon. You're gonna paint around that white layer. So it gives it kind of a glowing effect, okay? So let's see. Now we'll have to be very careful towards the top and the parts where the moon is coming off the edge of the paper. Make sure we keep that spherical. Remember guys, a little paint will go a long way. So what you guys have should be more than enough to do both your sky and your cat. All right, so I got that top part. Oops, going a little fast there. I'm trying to smooth that out so it looks as full as it can. And then get in all those little spaces that we missed, if there are any. Then once you have the top, you can go in the bottom. Now remember, you want to keep at least a little bit of that faded yellow color because you want it to look like it's glowing. I cut into mine a little bit more than I wanted to here, so I'm going to actually adjust where my canvas placement is so I can get to the spots I need to. All right. All right, and then we want to fill in, once we have that moon outlined, you can just go ahead and fill in the black wherever there's still white space. And then if you guys, I was using kind of like a middle-sized brush for this, but I would recommend after you've traced the moon with the black and you've outlined it, and then be careful because if you go too fast, things can get messy like that just did. But I recommend when you're coloring in the remaining white space to get your big brush out. They don't take as long. Now be careful when you get close, because again, if you go too fast, you're gonna get these little mistakes like I have, but we can smooth those out. It's no big deal. So get that black paint in. Again, fill up all those white spaces. All right, so as I finish up filling in the white space on the bottom of my canvas, I'm noticing that I still have a lot of white, well, not too much white, but it's not equal on the top and the bottom, my moon glow, if you will. So I'm gonna go back in and fix that a little bit. And then while I do that, and you guys finish up doing your backgrounds, your sky backgrounds, we want to make sure that this black paint dries before we continue on. So go ahead and take a break. let your canvas dry, and then when it's dry, we can continue on to our next step, okay? All right, and I think that looks a little bit more even than it did before. I'm going to try and round that out a little bit more. Okay. All right, guys, I am going to let this dry for a couple minutes and then we can go on to our next step, okay? All right, so as you can see, I already went ahead and sketched a cat on my moon. You guys are gonna get a stencil in your kits that you can trace or you can freehand it, that's entirely up to you. But we're gonna go ahead and start painting our cat. So if you're choosing to stencil it, go ahead and trace your cat onto your moon wherever you want. It doesn't have to be in the exact same spot as mine. You can have him sitting closer to the top if you want, and you could even draw a pumpkin on the bottom so he's sitting on that. We're actually gonna write something down there. But yeah, so you can trace your cat onto your moon or you can freehand it. If you're freehanding it, go ahead and pause the video and do that now. But I'm gonna go ahead and start going in on my cat. So I'm gonna start with its body. And I'm using a very tiny brush to outline this, just so I don't make any crazy large mistakes. You can use whatever you want though, but you guys should have a tiny brush in there as well, so it'll be perfect for what we're doing here. Also, as you guys can see, I went ahead and drew on my canvas with pencil. If you are using acrylic paint, pencil usually can cover, or acrylic paint can usually cover pencil marks pretty easily. With lighter colors such as yellow or white, you may need more than one coat, but with black, we should be okay with one. But you guys should have enough black paint anyway to do a second coat if need be, so. And as you can see, I'm gonna do the entire outline of the left side first. And the reason I'm doing the left side of the canvas first is because I have a habit of setting my hand down on the canvas when I paint. I'm right-handed, so it makes the most sense to me to start from the left and go to the right, just so I don't smudge anything, you know? If you are left-handed, you might want to actually do the opposite, but that's entirely up to you. Whatever you're comfortable with is what you want to do. And if you don't set your hand on the canvas like I do, you don't really have to worry about that. Right, so I'll get that ear filled in. Okay. Also, your cat does not have to look like mine. I think this like little football shaped head I'm doing right now is kind of cute for this cat. I kind of want him to look a little spooky for Halloween, so that's why I opted to do that, but you can do it in any way that you want to do. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and outline that head there. Then, okay, if you're drawing freehand your cat and you end up painting it and you don't like how it looks painted and you think you should make pieces bigger or whatever, you can totally do that. Just because you drew it on there does not mean you have to paint it exactly as it is. Your pencil mark should be more so a guide, if anything. And then the cool thing about acrylic, as you learned from the last video we did, is that it's very buildable. So if you make any mistakes, we can go back over with lighter colors on dark colors as long as the paint is dry. Now keep in mind, if you want to, let's say you don't like how your cat looks and you want to just go ahead and redo your moon altogether, you're going to need a lot of yellow paint to cover that dark paint. But it's going to take a couple coats. But it can be done. I guess that's the point we want to stress, is that mistakes can be fixed. It's just going to take a little effort to do so. So once you have your cat outlined with your smaller brush, again, like the outline with the moon and the night sky, you can go ahead and use a bigger brush to fill all that in. I am not going to do that because I tend to make mistakes when I do that. So I'm just going to keep this little brush going. And remember, a little paint goes a long way. As you can see, these small dabs of paint are stretching pretty far when I paint them on, so. All right, so I got the head filled in. We want that to dry before we add any kind of face or eyes or anything to it. I don't think I'll be adding an actual face. I think I'm just gonna add big, bright yellow eyeballs to my cat. So, but if you guys wanna do that too, you are more than welcome to give it a full cat face. I think that would look nice. All right, so I'm gonna start coloring in the cat's body. I got a couple lines here for the body because I didn't know how big I wanted him to be, so probably go right there. Now, okay, if you are drawing with pencil on your canvas, and like I have here, I have an extra line there that I don't necessarily need and probably won't end up really painting over, you can actually erase that. It shouldn't mess with your canvas too much as long as all your paint is dry. So obviously, if your paint is still wet, do not go in with that pencil eraser. You are not going to be happy with what happens. But if your paint is dry, go ahead and clean up any extra pencil markings you see that you don't need. Remember, your paint needs to be dry before you erase. All right, and then once we finish up this cat's body, we can start with the tail. Now, with this particular cat, we're gonna have a little fun with the tail. Because Halloween's coming up, we're gonna make it kind of spooky, and we're gonna put a spider web in the cat's tail to give it sort of a Halloween touch, if you will, besides our color scheme, of course, and we're gonna do that in the tail. So I already have mine drawn out, but I'll show you guys how to do that too, okay? Okay, so we're gonna go in with the black paint on that tail. I'm gonna start about here and have it go like this. Now I'm making pretty, well, not faint lines, if you will, but as you can see here, it's not really solid. I just want to get that general shape in at least to about here. So I can paint that tail in, make sure it's all even and the widths are okay before I go in and do that spider web. So I want my tail to be about that thick. Maybe a little thicker once get some of this paint in, actually. Yeah, I'm gonna go a little thicker with that tail. But we're gonna do that. Get those lines nice and clean. I'm giving that little curve to the tail too. And I'm also trying my best to keep that thickness of the tail consistent throughout too. So it's not skinny in some parts and thicker in others. And then if at any point you notice that some parts are thicker than others, go ahead and go back in. But just be very careful because, again, a little goes a long way. So you only probably need just a little bit more to get it that thickness you need. Oop. See, and then you make it too thick and do things like that. So try and smooth. If you do anything like that, just go ahead and smooth it out. Now be careful though, when you're smoothing things out like that, they automatically go a little bit thicker. So you're gonna have to go back and make sure the rest of it also has that same thickness. Otherwise it's gonna look a little silly. And just be careful when you're doing that too, because after a while, if you keep doing that, it's gonna be so thick that it just looks silly. It doesn't even look like a tail anymore, so. There we go, okay. So once we have that part of the tail in, we're gonna start doing this curve. And keep in mind that you want to leave enough space in the curve to put in your spider web. So it doesn't have to be huge, but keep in mind you're gonna be doing some detail work in there. Not a lot, just a little, but you wanna make it big enough to where it can fit and be legible still. I'm gonna do this curve up here. And as you guys can see, I'm going close to the lines I drew, but I'm even deciding to make it a little thicker myself as well, just so I can fit that spider web in there and have it not get all mushed together. Also, remember, if it helps, you can adjust the way you're holding your canvas. I'm actually gonna probably rotate my canvas a little bit, just like this, just so I can get a better angle at the tail. Now keep in mind though, now there's some wet paint on the other side of the canvas, so I don't want to set my hand in that. So then you gotta go back and fix it. All right, so we're almost done with that tail. And hopefully your paintings are kind of looking somewhat similar to mine. If not, that's totally okay. But if you are following along, hopefully yours is resembling mine a little bit. And then just a reminder, if you guys are enjoying these paintings and you want to share your masterpieces with us, feel free to tag us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and let us know that you completed your project. We would love to share it with everyone else too. All right, so I'm almost done with this tail. We're just going to smooth out a couple of these lines, fill a couple more areas in, and then we are good to go. Then we're going to start our spider web, which should be fun. You don't really have to clean your brush for the spider web because we're using the black paint still. But if you haven't been using your tiny brush, you are definitely going to want to switch over to your tiny brush for this. I would also say too, if you're afraid to paint in these tiny lines with the brush, if you have a Sharpie at home, you can also do that. It's not as fun as painting, but it still will give you the same results, I feel. Maybe not the exact same, but it'd still be a web, so it's got a little bit more control when you're using a Sharpie. However, I will be using paint. I'll show you how to use it with paint. You can still do the same thing though if you're using a marker of some sort. I would just recommend if you do use a marker, pick something permanent. All right, so I think we're good to go with our tail. How's that look? I think that's pretty good. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna do is we are going to do the web. Again, you're gonna wanna get your tiniest brush out for that. You guys should have a brush that's somewhat similar in size to the one I was just using. You may have one that's slightly smaller, but you shouldn't have, your small brush shouldn't be any bigger than the one I'm using. So you can use that. I'm actually gonna use a slightly tinier brush just so I can really get in there with those details. But go ahead and dip that brush in your black paint, and you want to pick something on the top part of the tail, bottom part of the tail. You just want to draw a line. Now the lighter you are with the brush stroke, the thinner the line will be. Mine are pretty thick, but I want you guys to be able to see it really nicely, so I was gonna do that anyway. But if you pick a lighter brush stroke, you'll be able to get thinner lines. So after you put that one in, I would go to that tip of the tail right here and do another one right across. Now, since these brushes are so small, they don't hold that much paint. So if you have to dip again, go ahead, of course, do what you gotta do. Just be mindful that you really don't need that much paint. You just kinda may have to adjust what you're doing there a little bit. All right, so I'm gonna pick this next one. So the rest of these lines do not even have to go through completely. I'm gonna do a line here. I'm gonna do a line here. And probably two more, maybe three. But I'm gonna get one here. And then probably break up this section right here. And then if you guys can tell from the video, I did not trace the same spider web that I drew originally with pencil. I ended up doing it a little differently, but that's okay. You know what, I'm gonna add one more right here too. Do one kind of thin area. Okay, so once you have your lines in for your spider web, you're gonna draw more lines to give it kind of that dimension. So I'm gonna do a kind of U shape right there. And then every time I draw it, I'm gonna connect it to the next line. Now you just want to kind of curve it a little bit. If you don't curve it, that's okay, but it won't have the same web effect if you don't curve it, so it might just look kind of silly if you don't. But whatever works. I'm just going to go around and do that all the way around until we get back to the beginning. And okay, a big thing with spider webs, they do not have to be even. If you see a spider web outside or in your house, they may look like they are all symmetrical, but they're not always symmetrical. You can do whatever you need to do. And you can make them kind of lopsided, makes them look creepier. I'm gonna line all mine up as well as I can, just so you guys can see what I'm doing. But by all means, experiment with different things. All right. And then realistically, you should be able to get, if you made this pretty big like I did, you should be able to get at least 1 or 2 more layers. Certain ones I think I'm gonna get 2, certain ones I might only get 1. But I'm gonna finish that up there. Ooh, that one's a little thick. All right, and then once you finish your spider web, we are going to let that dry a little bit and make sure your cat is fully dry before we go in and do some eyes on our cat. Or the cat's face if you're planning on doing a whole face. But please, please, please make sure that black paint is dry before you go in and do a face. Otherwise it will smudge, it will get muddy, and you will not like it. Or maybe you will, but I doubt it. And then keep in mind too, when you want to erase, if you pre-drew your spider web like I did, I'm gonna erase a lot of these web marks. I just am gonna wait until it dries to do that. So, all right, I'm gonna leave that just like that. Actually, I'll add one more up here. Okay, and then with that, I think my web is done. Again, I'm gonna wait till that dries, but then I'll go in and erase all the pencil marks on the tail. So based off of my test there, my cat is dry. So I'm not sure if yours is, but I'm gonna go ahead and start doing the face on mine since mine is dry. I would recommend probably still using your small brush for this. Since we were just using black paint, make sure you rinse your brush as well as you can before you dip that in any yellow paint, okay? So I am going to do some big circular eyes, I think. Now, as you can see, they don't look fully yellow right now. We're gonna have to do a couple coats of the yellow on top of the black. But as I mentioned earlier, it can be done. It's just gonna take a couple coats. You guys will have more than enough yellow paint in your containers to do this. So don't worry, you will not run out. I'm gonna do mine so the eyes are kind of, well, they're touching, they're very close together. They're big, cartoony, yellow eyes. That's what I want mine to look like. So he's silly and scary at the same time. And then with this yellow paint, you're gonna want it to dry before you keep going in with coats. My first coat on that left eye looked kind of diluted with water because my brush is kind of wet from rinsing it. So I decided to go back in like that. But it shouldn't take long to dry, so I got my first coat of yellow. And again, it doesn't really look fully yellow yet, but that's okay because we're gonna probably go over another coat or two for that. Okay, so while we're waiting for that to dry, we're gonna go ahead and start doing like stars and fun stuff in the sky. So you can take your small brush, make sure it's clean, and do little polka dots. All right, I'm also gonna put little like stars. So you can do a little kind of like a snowflake, but make like a T. And then do little in-betweens, an X in between the lines of the T. And get your little stars. There are a bunch of different techniques you can do for stars. Last time we painted, we ended up using, I believe, Q-tips and toothpicks to give us different sizes for your stars. If you guys have a spare unused toothbrush at home, or you have your own paintbrushes at home, you can try different kinds of techniques to get that starry effect. With a toothbrush, you can put the paint on it and kind of flick the bristles, and it will give you this cool, like, splattery kind of star effect, which I love using that. It's a lot easier to do that, though, when you have, like, a full background as opposed to a small amount of background. Since our background isn't that big, we would get a bunch of splatters on the actual moon, and I feel like that would take away from what you're doing, so it's better to just polka dot, I think, today. All right, and I'm actually gonna put a couple on the underside of the moon too. Start off with my little twinkling bursts of star, like that. I'll put another one right down here too. Then we can polka dot down there too. I'm gonna leave kind of a little bit of space down there though, because I'm thinking about writing something down there. We could put Happy Halloween or maybe Boo or something like that. I'm probably just gonna write Boo on mine, but you guys can write whatever you want. Okay. Now, while we were doing that, our yellow paint, since it's so thin, should be dry, and we should be able to go ahead and go in again with that. So just make sure that brush is super dry. Make sure it's clean again if you used any other color. Unless it's white. White would be okay. But we're gonna go ahead and go back in on our yellow paint. See, now that's looking a little bit more yellow. Or at least it should be. All right, and then once you get that second coat of yellow paint going, go ahead and let your canvas dry before we go in with a third coat, okay? As you can see, I'm putting on a lot of yellow paint here because my black paint keeps peeking through. Go ahead and let this dry and then add another coat though. All right, so our eyes should be dry by now. We can go in and do one final coat of yellow. Now, if you guys end up wanting to do another coat of yellow after this, that's totally okay. I'm just gonna do one more so we can get that writing in the bottom. I can show you guys how to do that. And then, you know what, maybe after this dries, if I think we need another coat, we can add one, but I think we'll be okay with just this one more. But after you put your next layer of yellow paint on the eyes, you're gonna wanna let it dry before we go ahead and put that pupil in. So after you get this coat done, which I'm almost done, we're gonna go ahead and decorate the bottom of the canvas. So I am going to write boo on mine, like boo, ghost, scary. But you can write Happy Halloween, write your name, whatever you want to write. It doesn't even have to be Halloween related. If you just really love cats, you could just put I heart cats, I don't know. Okay. All right, so go ahead and clean your brush. Make that as clean as you can, and then I'm gonna go ahead and go in with orange paint. I'm probably gonna give you guys an extra color or two, maybe green or purple if you guys wanna use that, but I'm gonna use orange. And then I'm gonna take probably my tiny brush and go ahead and write boo. Now I'm just gonna outline it real quick and then make it thicker after I get it in. But I wanna make sure I can fit the word I'm trying to write in the space before I go ahead and make any of the letters thick or not. Throw in an exclamation point. All right. So once you get your letters in for whatever you're doing, you can go ahead and make those letters thicker. Make them like bubble letters or make them look kind of creepy. I don't know what you want to do, but I'm just going to put some basic, just letters there in orange. And then just like we did with the eyes, since we're doing this on black paint, a black background, if you want, you can do more than one coat. I might just do one. We'll see how that goes. You want to do this paint, you want to put the paint on evenly as you spread it through. You don't want to put it too thick. All right. And then you can make your letters thicker than I did. I didn't want to make them too big just because I don't want it to take away from what else we've painted today. But they don't have to be as small or as thin as mine. You can do them as thick as you want. I'm gonna round out my exclamation point and put a little dot there. There we go. Smooth out some of those lines. Maybe go back over this a little bit just because it looks like I did some of the paint thicker in areas than others, so we gotta fix that. All right. And then once you get those letters in, you get those painted on, we can go back and see if our eyes are dry enough to do the cat's pupils and finish those up. And then once we have those cat eyes finished, we are almost done. All we have to do is maybe do a second coat on our letters, but kind of like how my letters are looking right now anyway, so we'll even see. All right, so I got my boo in, perfect. All right, so let's look at the eyes. My eyes look like they're dry enough. They don't feel dry enough though. So we're gonna go ahead and let those dry a little bit more, and then we'll go ahead and do the pupils. Okay guys, so our last step for this painting is to do the eyes for the cat, the pupils of it though. So I'm gonna do mine like little cat eyes, but you can do yours however you want. I'm going to take my tiny brush and do a kind of slightly curved line in the middle of the eye. And then kind of mimic that curved for the other way. I'm trying to go very slow with this, so I get smooth lines. There we go. There's one. We're gonna go and do the same exact thing on the other side. Remember, you wanna do light brush strokes and go kind of slow so you don't mess up. All right, we got our cat eyes. Now, so I don't know if you guys want to add whiskers or if you want to add, you know, little cat fang kind of teeth or something like that. If you guys want to add a spider to your spider web, you guys can do anything you want to further continue this piece. But this is what our finished product looks like. So if you want, you can go back in and touch up anything that you think needs to be touched up. Remember, once your painting is completely dry, you can go back in and erase some of those pencil marks. So my black paint is dry. And yeah, those pencil marks are coming up pretty easily. So you should be able to do that. But again, wait till your painting's dry before you do that. Otherwise it's gonna smudge. You're gonna be sad. But once you clean up all those pencil marks, if you want, you can go over that black paint. The pencil shouldn't really mess with it, but again, if you think it does, go ahead and go over that with some black paint. And then once you erase all your pencil marks, I have a couple more over here that could go. You are all done. Make sure you sign your painting. I usually do mine in the corner. I'll probably sign this one on the back though, because if I'm not mistaken, these canvases have a spot for that. But I always sign my finished work, so everyone knows that I'm the one who made it. But yeah, so this is your finished product. And here is our finished product sitting on an easel. So this is what I got as my end product. If you were following along, hopefully yours looks somewhat similar to this. If it doesn't, that's totally okay. As we've said like 10 times already, doesn't have to look like a carbon copy of mine. As long as you had fun, that's what matters. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope to see you guys again in December for a holiday-related painting workshop. See you next time. Bye.